Hello all, welcome to study 46 of the Solving Studies to Improve Chess Calculation series. This study is from Vladimir Korolkov, a Russian chess composer. He composed almost 400 studies, so a big number already. He was also important because he was one of the first to write about the art of composing chess studies, something that we have very few information nowadays, and even in English language, almost none. He wrote in Russian language, and almost all were not translated. He wrote in articles mostly. He also wrote some books, but more about selection of studies and books on that genre. And so let's see what this electrical engineer brought to us today. So, as always, if you haven't watched the guide, so you are more prepared to the practice. If you already watched the guide, then we can move on to the countdown, and I catch you again after with the solution. And here we are for the solution, and the best move is bishop c2. Excellent. Why bishop c2 is important? Well, let's look at the position. So white is fighting for a draw, and so the best way is to try to advance the pawn so it can promote either taking the knight on b8 or promoting to c8. But there's a problem, and the problem is the pawn is currently pinned by the black bishop. So, unless we are able to do something immediately about it, well, black will simply take the pawn, and with two extra pawns, it's going to be an easy win for blacks. That's why very fast we need to find bishop c2. So, offering our bishop as a sacrifice so we can unpin the pawn. So, the idea is if the bishop takes our bishop, we simply advance the pawn. So now we are guaranteeing the promotion of the pawn, either one way or another. And lucky for black, it's still a draw, but it's black now that it's fighting for the draw, needs to remove the knight. We promote to the queen, and the bishop comes back to f5 with the idea of placing itself on e6, and with all pieces being protected, we are going to see that the fortress is still a draw. But it's not the ideal situation for black, of course, because black wants to play for the win. Because black wants to play for the win, the position of the bishop will be very important. So black decides to sacrifice the pawn. A small detail. Uh, of course, white will take the pawn, placing black in the same situation, but now black takes the bishop with a different diagonal. Now, of course, white will advance the pawn, but because the bishop is on d3 and not on c2, black can deliver this check. This check, of course, is to control the promotion of the pawn, and white is in a difficult situation, needs to find very precise move. Because if the king takes the knight, then it's a loss. Because black will simply advance the pawn now is unstoppable. And of course, white can't promote because the bishop is controlling. And white king can do nothing about it. If it attacks the bishop, well, the bishop just goes in front of the pawn, so avoiding it to promote again. If the king attacks again the bishop, well, we are not going to be here dancing. The bishop goes to the other diagonal, so keeps controlling again the square of the promotion of the pawn. So if the pawn promotes, the bishop directly sacrifice, and then the pawn advances to a queen. So if the king can't progress, we simply advance the pawn, and it's a win. When, as I told you, the pawn promotes, the king takes, but then it's unstoppable. And so black is going to an easy win. Okay, so white now has three more options. Let's see them. This one is very similar to going to a7. So let's just see what is the move black needs to do over here. Of course, we are intending to control the promotion of the pawn. This is very important. But at the same time, we need to deal with the possibility of white taking our knight and promoting with it. So we need to remove the knight. And of course, there are not many options over here. So this is kind of obvious. It's not just the only move. It's not just a good move. It's the only move. So knight c6. And now, of course, king can take the knight because it's protected, but can take the bishop. And if it takes the bishop, then we go to the other side. And so we are again controlling the pawn promotion. We are going to see that this is the same as the king going to a7. So again, we are threatening to take the knight with and promoting the pawn. So the knight goes to c6, and the king takes the bishop again, and so the knight goes to e7. So both these moves are ending in this position, and this position is played in a simple way. We are going to use our king to help to control the position from the 8th rank, while then advancing the pawn and taking the other pawn and so on. Let's see that just one line, so I show you. So white king will try to attack the knight so it can promote. Okay, so white king goes close to our knight, but as you can see, black king is already in control. Let's just go and see here. Oh, sorry. Let's go and see the king now reach the 8th rank. So the king now needs to move away. Notice that black is controlling a lot of squares over here. So the king needs to come back. And when it comes back, I simply can waste a tempo, like for example, going over here. Just now, I am blocking the king from approaching the pawn. What else can white do? Maybe play this side, but now I can advance the pawn one time. If the king moves, well, I simply can now bring the king. Now the king needs to have control over our pawn. So more or less, it's easy to find this with a little patience. And now I take the pawn. And as you can see, it's a really easy win for black from now on. So when white is in this uncomfortable situation, by exclusion of possibilities, I can say that white needs to go to the corner, which is the brilliant save of the game. Why? It's black to play. Of course, black doesn't want the pawn to promote, and at the moment it can promote taking the knight. So again, the knight needs to move, goes to c6, and now suddenly the pawn promotes to the queen, forcing the bishop to take it, and as soon as the bishop takes it, it's a stalemate position, it's a draw, and white was able to save the game. Okay, so if you look at the beginning, we notice that we have the pin, and if you look at the end, we have this stalemate position. And as I told you on the beginning, Vladimir Korolkov was also a person that started to wrote about chess composition. And one thing I found interesting, this is a bit an extra, but it's a curiosity, is that he explained that he started with this position to get that ending idea. And basically, he worked this position back. Okay, I placed the king, it's a stalemate position. So my first question was, what was the previous move? And of course, he removed the bishop to the diagonal and placed a queen promotion, so to force the bishop to take. And then he went one move back. Okay, so what was the previous move from this one? Okay, the promotion of the pawn. And what was the previous move from this one? And he placed the knight on the b8, so the knight also was forced to come back. And what was the previous from the knight? Of course, the king being checked and being forced to go. Of course, this is easier told than done, but he explained on an article how he developed the composition until coming back one time, two times, three times, until he built this interesting and very enjoyable study. So I hope you also have enjoyed this one with this extra input on the end, and see you again in future studies. Bye bye.